Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. I mean, imagine losing millions in investment capital, not because your revenue dropped or, because your product failed, but literally because you couldn't prove to a computer program exactly how much water your supplier used last quarter.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but that is the new reality of corporate finance right there.
It really
No.
is. For a long time, terms like environmental footprint and social governance, they just lived safely in the realm of public relations. It was essentially a nice to have.
Right, maybe a glossy page in the annual report, but nothing more.
Exactly. But today, we are looking at an undeniable shift where those exact same metrics carry the exact same weight and the same audit requirements as your quarterly revenue report.
It is a profound structural change in how markets actually value a business. And to break this down, we are looking at a comprehensive guide by Felix Römer from smartkeys.org.
Yeah, it's titled ESG Framework, Integrating Environmental, Social, and Governance Goals.
Right, and the text really breaks down how ESG has transitioned from this, marketing exercise into a highly regulated, data-heavy discipline.
So our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the strategic insights from Romer's article and treat it as a playbook for you, the listener.
Because if you are a modern professional navigating this, you really need to understand the mechanics of this shift.
Absolutely. So to set the baseline here, building a corporate sustainability program is very much like building a modern skyscraper. I mean, everyone wants the shiny, eco-friendly building to show off to the public, right?
Oh, of course. Everybody wants the finished product.
But if you just start pouring concrete without a blueprint, which we can think of as your ESG framework, and without strict building codes, which are your standards, you just end up with a chaotic, expensive mess.
You do. And without those standards, the building codes, your framework, the blueprint will completely collapse the second an auditor leans on it. The text points out that businesses frequently trip up right out of the gate here because they use the terms framework and standard interchangeably.
Which they aren't.
Not at all. They serve completely different structural purposes in your corporate strategy.
Okay, so let's separate them for a second. A framework provides the high-level guidance, right? It dictates the what and the who.
Exactly, yeah.
It helps a company figure out how to organize its sustainability topics, determine the scope of what the business actually impacts, and, assign internal ownership. It's really the narrative structure.
Well, the standards provide the precise math. Standards are the specific metrics, the accounting rules, and the rigid definitions.
So they dictate exactly how you calculate everything.
Yes. A standard specifies the quality requirements so that your disclosures are comparable year over year. But more importantly, standards ensure the data is assurance ready.
Meaning an external auditor can actually verify it.
Exactly. An external auditor has to be able to look at your carbon output or your labor metrics and verify them using the exact same rigor they apply to your financial balance sheets.
Wait, okay. Building a broad structural framework and measuring precise, mathematically rigid standards simultaneously? I mean, for a mid-sized company, that just sounds like a massive administrative nightmare.
It really does.
Does a company actually need both?
Yeah.
Or is that just creating double the work for teams that are already stretched entirely too thin?
Well, it feels like double the work if you try to implement them backward. But the text emphasizes that they are designed to work in tandem. They prevent future bottlenecks.
Okay, how so?
So you rely heavily on a reporting framework early on when your program is in its infancy. The framework shapes your internal policy, it establishes the cadence of your reporting, and it guides how you engage with your stakeholders.
Right, setting the stage, basically.
Exactly. But as your internal data controls mature, you must layer in the reporting standards. You map those high-level policies to specific, standards-aligned metrics.
I see. Because if you attempt to apply rigid standards without a framework,
You just end up measuring hundreds of random data points without any cohesive strategy.
which helps no one.
Exactly. And conversely, if you only use a framework without adopting standards, well, you have a lovely corporate story with zero verifiable proof for your investors.
That makes a lot of sense. But okay, once a company accepts that they need both the overarching framework and the underlying standards, they look out into the market and hit an absolute wall of acronyms.
Oh, the alphabet soup is real.
It's a complete alphabet soup. Why do we even need all these different organizations dictating how we report data?
Well, we have different organizations because they cater to entirely different audiences.
Okay.
A major theme in Römer's analysis is that you have to match your reporting approach to your specific market exposure. If you choose the wrong standard, you end up doing incredibly costly, redundant data collection.
Right. So let's look at the core reporting initiatives, starting with the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI. From what I've read, GRI seems heavily geared toward a company's social license to operate.
It is, yeah. GRI provides universal and sector-specific standards focused primarily on impact. A business leans on GRI when its goal is to communicate with stakeholders.
Like employees and customers.
Exactly. Employees, customers, local communities, and labor unions. The focus is on outward impact. It's about how the company's operations are affecting the environment and society.
Okay, so that's GRI. Then you have SB, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, which seems to flip that perspective entirely.
It does. SSB provides 77 distinct industry standards, but they are focused strictly on what is financially material.
So it's written for the investor.
Purely for the investor. It isolates the specific ESG metrics that are highly likely to impact the financial operating performance of a company within a specific industry.
Right, so it allows an investor to compare, say, the financial resilience of two competing airlines.
Or two competing software companies, yeah, based on the non-financial metrics that actually matter to their bottom lines.
Got it. And following that investor focus, you also have the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure.
Yes. TCFD structures climate reporting specifically into 4 pillars: governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics.
So you'd use TCFD to prove to your board of directors and your capital providers that you basically have a strategy to survive climate-related physical and transition risks.
Precisely.
But, I mean, having GRI for communities, SSB for investors, and TCFD for climate risk, that creates an incredibly fragmented landscape.
It's a huge headache for corporate teams.
Which makes sense why the text highlights the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standards Board, as a new global baseline.
Right. The ISSB actually absorbed other bodies, including the value reporting work of SSB.
Because the goal was to end the chaos for global markets, right? To provide a single, comprehensive baseline so investors aren't constantly comparing apples to oranges.
Exactly. And consolidating those standards into a global baseline is essential because of a really vital concept explored in the text called double materiality.
Oh, this is a huge one.
It is. Understanding double materiality is really the key to navigating this entire reporting landscape.
Yeah, and the best way to visualize double materiality is to think of a two-way mirror.
I love this analogy.
Right,
Yeah.
so on one side of the mirror, you are looking outward at the world. This represents financial materiality.
Okay.
You are assessing how external forces, like a new carbon tax or maybe a supply chain disrupted by extreme weather, how those impact your company's enterprise value. It is the world impacting the business.
Right.
Then you step to the other side of the mirror and look inward. This is impact materiality. It requires examining how your company's internal operations and supply chains actually affect the people and ecosystems around you.
So it's the business impacting the world.
Exactly.
And if you only look at the outward financial risk, you are completely blind to the regulatory fines and reputational damage coming your way because of your own outward impact.
The article grounds this theory in a very practical example involving an e-commerce company building a risk matrix, which I thought was super helpful.
Yeah, let's walk through that.
Okay, so if an e-commerce company only uses single financial materiality, they might just buy some carbon offsets, claim they are green, and call it a day, right?
Right.
Because they don't see an immediate hit to their stock price.
Right, but under double materiality, that exact same e-commerce firm is forced to recognize that their massive use of packaging waste, the labor conditions in their international supply chains, and their data privacy ethics are highly material impacts on the world.
Which eventually catches up to them.
Exactly. Poor practices in those specific areas will inevitably boomerang back and pose a massive financial risk to their enterprise value down the line.
So a clear double materiality matrix forces a company to abandon generic green initiatives and prioritize the specific day-to-day operational changes that actually mitigate risk.
That's it, exactly.
So if you have these competing lenses, the financial risk of the world on the business and the impact risk of the business on the world, it is no surprise that global regulators are aggressively stepping in to force companies to actually prove their claims.
No, businesses certainly aren't volunteering for grueling data audits. They are being mandated to do so.
Right. The policy momentum has totally shifted corporate sustainability. from voluntary guidelines to standardized, mandatory legal requirements globally.
And the text details how different regions are approaching this, which reflects the different philosophies we just discussed, like in the United States, for example.
Right, the SEC.
Yeah, the Securities and Exchange Commission has proposed rules requiring public companies to report climate-related risks that are reasonably likely to have a material impact on their business.
Which aligns purely with financial materiality.
Exactly. The SEC's mandate is to protect the U.S. investor. So their rules demand that companies disclose actual greenhouse gas emission totals and detail their transition plans so investors know if the company is a safe bet in a low-carbon economy.
But then, over in the European Union, the regulatory framework goes significantly further by legally mandating double materiality.
Yeah, the EU CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, it represents a massive structural shift.
It's huge.
It widens the scope of mandatory reporting to roughly 50,000 firms, and it requires incredibly detailed disclosure modules covering everything from greenhouse gas emissions to biodiversity impacts and workforce policies.
And the pressure isn't just coming from corporate regulators either. The finance sector itself is being squeezed.
Oh, heavily.
The text outlines the SFDR, the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation in Europe. It basically forces investment funds to publish principal adverse impact statements.
Right. Which means if an investment fund holds equity in a portfolio of companies, that fund is legally required to calculate its financed impacts proportionally.
So they have to publicly disclose how much hazardous waste or how much unadjusted gender pay gap is tied to their specific equity share across all their investments.
Exactly, which is a staggering amount of data to collect.
So the asset managers are turning around and demanding incredibly reliable, granular data from the companies they invest in, just so the asset managers can stay compliant themselves.
It all rolls downhill.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are a multinational company, the sheer weight of these demands is staggering.
It's overwhelming for a lot of teams.
You have asset managers demanding ISSB financial metrics. You have employees advocating for GRI impact metrics. The SEC is asking for greenhouse gas totals. And the EU is demanding massive double materiality assessments. How does a multinational company possibly speak to all these different audiences without losing their minds?
Well, the operational challenge is preventing your internal teams from completely fracturing under those competing demands.
Right.
The strategy outlined by Römer requires entirely overhauling how a company coordinates its inputs, meaning your risk management team, your human resources department, your facility energy managers, and your procurement teams cannot operate in silos anymore.
They have to talk to each other.
They all have to feed their raw data into a central, standardized repository. You maintain a consistent core message for your annual reports, but you map that central data outward to meet the specific regional mandates.
Because if the EU is forcing a multinational to track the exact carbon footprint of a supplier 3 continents away, a team of accountants passing an Excel file back and forth isn't going to cut it.
Not a chance. You will burn your procurement team out, and the data will be completely riddled with errors. Human effort alone simply cannot handle this level of data coordination.
Which brings us to the tech backbone.
Yes. The transition from voluntary to mandatory reporting is driving the death of the spreadsheet in corporate sustainability.
RIP to the spreadsheet.
Truly. Spreadsheets lack strict change controls. They do not have the immutable audit trails that financial regulators and institutional investors now demand.
Right. Because if a company's data is fragmented across random spreadsheets, PDFs of utility bills, and manual procurement invoices, their final reporting is going to be virtually impossible for a third party to verify.
And you cannot build a defensible corporate strategy on data that someone might accidentally overwrite with a typo.
Exactly. So this shift requires specialized enterprise-grade software. We are talking about tech backbones that automate data capture directly from the source.
Yeah, pulling data automatically from smart meters on factory floors, extracting numbers straight from enterprise resource planning systems, and integrating direct data feeds from global supply chain vendors.
And capturing the raw data is really only the first step. The real complexity lies in translating that business activity into standardized ESG metrics.
Which is where things get highly technical. The text highlights a critical piece of technology called the emissions factor engine.
Okay, let's break that down.
So when a company reports on its Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 carbon emissions, they are dealing with a massive variety of inputs.
Right.
They have business travel measured in miles, factory electricity measured in kilowatt hours, and raw materials measured in tons.
And you can't just hand a regulator a list of miles driven and electricity bills.
No. You have to convert all of that into carbon equivalents, which requires referencing massive, complex scientific data sets, like EGRI USA or the EPA or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
So an emissions factor engine automates that conversion.
Exactly. You plug in 500 hours of natural gas generator usage. The software automatically references the most up-to-date, geographically appropriate data set, and it calculates the exact carbon equivalent.
It just removes the human mathematical errors from the equation entirely.
It has to.
And then that raw converted data feeds into what the text calls the master crosswalk.
Yes, the master crosswalk. This is the mechanism that prevents a company from doing the same work 4 times.
So imagine you measure your main manufacturing plant's water usage. It's one raw number, say 10,000 gallons.
Yes.
The master crosswalk takes that single data point and automatically maps it to multiple different frameworks.
It formats it into the specific financial risk metric that ISSB demands, while simultaneously translating it into the community impact metric that GRI requires and slotting it into the precise disclosure module needed for the EU's CSRD.
The master crosswalk is basically the strategic realization of collect once, report many times.
It is. But relying so heavily on automated systems introduces a very real vulnerability.
Let me play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If we are setting up direct feeds from ERP systems and smart meters into an automated factor engine, and then blindly mapping that out to global regulators, aren't we just risking a massive garbage in, garbage out scenario?
Oh, absolutely.
Like if a smart meter breaks and sends flawed data, our beautifully automated crosswalk is just going to produce perfectly formatted, highly inaccurate reports that expose the company to regulatory fines.
That vulnerability is exactly why automation by itself is insufficient, and why the text highlights the integration of artificial intelligence. In the context of ESG data management, AI isn't being used as a generative tool to just write sustainability reports. It is deployed as an aggressive gatekeeper for data integrity.
So how does that work in practice?
Well, AI models are trained to continuously monitor these massive incoming data streams to spot anomalies and flag outliers at a speed and scale that human analysts just cannot match.
Oh, I see. So if a sensor glitches in a facility in Germany and reports a 400% spike in water usage, the AI algorithm catches the statistical impossibility before it ever feeds into the master crosswalk.
Exactly. It isolates the error, flags it for human review, and maintains the integrity of the audit trail.
That is brilliant.
And beyond data cleaning, the text notes that AI is increasingly used to forecast emissions trajectories.
Okay, so looking forward instead of just backward.
Right. It can take a company's historical data, factor in planned operational changes, and test those pathways against highly complex science-aligned climate scenarios. It transforms a grueling manual reconciliation process into a system that actually provides insight-driven decision-making for leadership.
Naturally, this requires strict practical guardrails, right?
Okay.
Like algorithmic bias checks and data privacy controls.
Of course. But AI is the critical component that makes these modular data systems reliable enough for regulatory scrutiny.
Right, so we've established that the frameworks act as the blueprint and the standards act as the building codes.
Yes.
We have explored how global regulators are forcing this data into the light and how AI-driven software provides the only viable tech backbone to survive the transition.
We've covered a lot of ground.
So what is the ultimate payoff for a business that successfully implements this? Why does this level of rigor actually matter to the listener's bottom line?
The payoff is uninterrupted access to capital. Capital providers, institutional investors, and global banks now demand investor-grade metrics before they allocate funds.
So if a business structures its greenhouse gas accounting, its water and waste management, and its labor metrics with the exact same reverence and auditability as its financial data, it stops being a compliance burden.
Exactly. It becomes a competitive moat. When investors can mathematically trust your risk profile, you reduce the chance of shareholder activism, you lower your cost of capital, and you fundamentally improve your overall corporate valuation.
It shifts the entire organizational mindset from reactive compliance, just trying to avoid fines, to proactive risk management and strategic growth.
And that shift leads us to a highly actionable takeaway drawn straight from Felix Römer's guide.
Which is?
Do not wait for regulators to finalize every single reporting rule before you act. Start building a compact core KPI catalog today.
Right. Clearly define the boundaries of your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions.
Begin creating that single master crosswalk for your data right now before the audits become mandatory.
And design your data architecture to be modular so that when new regulatory modules inevitably emerge, you can plug them into your existing system without needing a total ground-up re-engineering of your internal processes.
Treating this as an ongoing data operations challenge rather than a once-a-year reporting chore is how modern businesses will maintain their agility.
As we wrap up here, there is a really forward-looking implication to this shift that is worth exploring in your next strategy meeting.
Oh, definitely.
We discussed how AI is currently being embedded to clean corporate data and forecast internal emissions. But as ESG metrics become universally standardized, entirely machine-readable, and financially rigorous, we are rapidly approaching a reality where AI agents will be the entities evaluating other companies' data.
Which is wild to think about.
Imagine a capital market where investment allocation happens autonomously. AI agents representing major funds will basically bypass the glossy, human-written sustainability reports entirely, relying strictly on the raw, audited data streams flowing from your master crosswalk to make instantaneous investment decisions.
It fundamentally changes who or what you are actually reporting to. When machines are the primary consumers of your sustainability data, the demand for absolute, verifiable accuracy supersedes any corporate narrative.
It is a stark reminder that the blueprint and the building codes are no longer optional. Well, thank you for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast. If you found the insights in this deep dive valuable for your strategic planning, please subscribe to the show for more analysis on the rapidly changing future of work and corporate efficiency.
We also highly encourage you to read Felix Römer's full guide on this topic. It contains invaluable details on these frameworks.
Absolutely, and you can find the direct link to the article right in the show notes.
Yeah.
Take care, and we will see you next time.